look at the individual roles in your company and your team, in certain departments, and try and project out 12 to 18 months from now, what do those roles look like? And that's the part I'm worried about, that just not enough corporations are having those conversations. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Show, the podcast that helps your business grow smarter by making AI approachable and actionable. My name is Paul Raitzer. I'm the founder and CEO of Marketing AI Institute, and I'm your host. Each week, I'm joined by my co-host and Marketing AI Institute Chief Content Officer, Mike Kaput, as we break down all the AI news that matters and give you insights and perspectives that you can use to advance your company and your career. Join us as we accelerate AI literacy for all. Welcome to episode 100 of the Artificial Intelligence Show. I'm your host, Paul Raitzer, along with my co-host, as always, Mike Kaput. What's happening, Mike?
Not much. How's it going?
Good. Well, it's an adventure. I mean, so again, timestamp this. We are recording this Wednesday, May 29th. So this is our special edition 100th episode. We've had a couple of change of venues this morning trying to make this happen, but we are here recording this. It's going to drop on May 30th. So if you're a regular listener to the show, you know we decided to do a special edition for the 100th episode that is all about answering your questions. So we had more than 100 questions submitted by our listeners over the last 2 weeks since we put that link out there. So we appreciate everyone who took the time to submit questions. We've got a ton to get through. We're going to try and Mike's curated a list of about 25 or so questions. I think we curated it. So we're going to try and get to all. We're going to try and answer as quick as possible. As long as I don't detour us too much off of any one of them, we should be able to get through them all. So we're going to get to as many as we can. So today's episode is brought to us by the AI for B2B Marketers Summit that is presented by our presenting sponsor, Intercept. This event is an inaugural event, so it's new to our event series. It's coming up June 6th from 12 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's designed to help B2B marketers reinvent what's possible in their companies and careers. During the event, you're going to have a chance to learn about AI and how it can be infused in creating dynamic customer experiences, how we can bridge the gap between marketing and sales, build an AI council. We're going to talk about real world adoption with some leading marketers, leading B2B marketers. So it should be a lot of fun. There's more than 3,000 people already registered. There is a free registration option. Again, thanks to our presenting sponsor, Intercept. You can go to b2bsummit.ai to get registered today. There's an on-demand and private registration option as well, but you can get registered for that for free. If you attended our AI for Writers Summit, same format, same general idea, and we had just amazing responses to that event. So we're hoping to, really bring another phenomenal event to everybody. And again, making it free, trying to make AI as affordable and as accessible as we can. So check out b2bsummit.ai to get registered for that event. Again, coming up June 6th. And then the Piloting AI course series. If you're new to the show and haven't heard about this, or if you've been with us before and haven't had a chance to take a look at it, Piloting AI is a collection of 18 on-demand courses that's designed as a step-by-step learning path for beginners at all levels, from interns to CMOs. More than 1,000 professionals have registered for this certification series since it first launched in December 2022. The 2024 series is fully updated, includes more AI technology demos and vendors, revised templates, a brand new generative AI 101 course. Mike and I went through and updated all the content and re-recorded everything at the end of January 2024. So it's fresh. About 9 hours of content that covers everything you need to know in order to begin piloting AI in your role and in your company. And it does include a professional certification upon passing the final exam. Not just for individual learners, you can do entire teams. There's special pricing options for team purchases. So check that out at pilotingai.com. You can use POD100 promo code to get $100 off. And so again, pilotingai.com. If you're looking at team licenses, be sure to reach out to Kathy and our team through the online form. Okay, so episode 100, quick backstory. We've told parts of this story before on the podcast, but we have so many new listeners every week. Well, kind of a quick rewind. Where did the podcast come from? So the podcast, formerly known as the Marketing AI Show, many of you are with us from our origins as kind of more of a marketing podcast. The premise when we first launched the podcast back in like, I guess MAICON 2019 was the origin of the podcast. And then what we tried to do in the initial going, like the first 10 or so episodes, was I would just interview people in the AI industry. But what became challenging over time was I wasn't very good about consistently doing it. So it took time to, find the people to interview, coordinate the interviews, prep for the interviews. And so we just weren't getting it done. I personally wasn't getting it done. And then around September or so, 2022, I'd approached Mike and I was like, listen, man, there's so much going on. We're sharing these links back and forth all week long, like, and we don't do anything with it. Like, if Mike had time, he would turn, stories into articles on our site. But even that, we were having trouble like staying consistent with. We were doing a lot of republishing of past like tips and tools and tactics and things like that, which is great. But we felt like we needed more original, fresh content with a unique perspective, like to try and bring something valuable to the story. So in October 2022, we launched our first weekly episode of the Marketing AI Show. So episode 20 of the podcast was actually the first one in that weekly format that everyone has kind of, gotten used to. So for some context, in 2022, that entire year, we had 4,800 downloads of the podcast. Now, keep in mind, when we launched this in 2022, I didn't even know what the KPI was for a podcast. So we were not doing this as like some major marketing strategy, like let's go build this massive audience and drive growth through this channel. It was a storytelling thing for us. Like, let's tell the story each week, and then let's use that to create original content for the blog. And then we record the videos and we can distribute that through YouTube. And like, basically we can, start diversifying our channels. But it was really a content play for us and a storytelling play. So 2022, 4,800 downloads. 2021, the year prior, there was 1,600. In 2023, I think it was over 150,000. 2024, we're on pace for 350 to 400,000 downloads. So just remarkable growth. And over time, we started realizing, wow, this is the most valuable channel we have. Like the ability every week to not only put fresh content out there, but for Mike and I to step back and actually think about what's happening. And so I've said on the podcast before, and Mike, I'm sure you would agree, like this forcing function of us doing this every week is the most valuable thing we do for ourselves. Like I'm I'm thrilled that you all get value out of the podcast, but the reality is like we would probably force ourselves to do this if there was still only 5,000 downloads a year, because we actually synthesize what's happening and we try and make sense of it. And then we develop a point of view that carries through into our online courses, the workshops we teach, the presentations that Mike and I give, the limited consulting work we do. Like this has become a really, really valuable thing for me, for Mike, for our organization, and luckily for all of you as well. So that's kind of just a quick background I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit before we got into this. But um, again, the idea for this 100th episode was let's make this about you. Like, what is it that's on your mind? Answer your questions. And so, as I said up front, we had more than 100 questions submitted. We've curated it down to about 25 or so. We're going to try and get through over the next, 45, 50 minutes. And with that, Mike, let's get to the questions.
All right, Paul. So like you said, we got a bunch of questions here. We solicited these through a form that we promoted to the audience, to the podcast on our website. Basically, people just submitted whatever questions they had about AI. Didn't have to be about AI in marketing or business, though many of them were. And with each of them, we asked people if we could share their name as we read out their questions. So for the ones where that's relevant, I'm going to do that. I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm going to try to pronounce your name as well as I can. So please have a little understanding. But I will go ahead and introduce the person by their first name and then also read out the question for you, Paul, and let you take it away. So first up, we have a question from John. And he said, in your 100 episodes of the show, what is the most standout moment for you in terms of AI beginning to redefine key aspects of people's future work? What are some of the key points of the journey so far as revealed through everything we've kind of looked at on the podcast?
Wow, that's a far-reaching one to think about. I don't know. I've had this belief for a while, probably back to the origin of, October 2022 when we really started doing this and we wrote about it in the book. Like I think that it's going to be a bit messy. That as AI is adopted more deeply into enterprises, because I feel like we are just at the very beginning of the AI adoption curve in enterprises. Um, I do think there's going to be disruption within a lot of industries to knowledge work. And I think that could mean some job loss. I do think it will create amazing new career opportunities for people as well. I just don't know that that's going to happen as quickly as some of the job disruption. And I would say over the last like 80 or so episodes since we started the weekly format, we've talked about a lot of different research reports and articles and podcasts we've listened to and videos we've watched related to the workforce and the economy. And I don't know that my position has changed much since October 2022. I still don't feel like economists largely are properly preparing people for the disruption, but I think it's because they don't necessarily understand it themselves. Because I think to understand the impact on the future of work, you have to have a reasonable estimation about what these models are going to be capable of in the next 1 to 2 years. And so I just feel like we need to prepare for a number of contingencies. I think if it ends up great and we don't have a job loss, a net job loss, and everyone's life just gets better, then wonderful. Like, I hope that is what happens. But I think there's enough of a chance that it's not that clean and amazing in the near term that we should at least prepare for the idea that in some industries, there's going to be disruption to knowledge work. There's just going to be fewer humans needed to do the current roles that are asked of them. And until we create the new career paths, or until organizations figure out how to function when they can be so efficient and so productive, there's just a chance that it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to the economy and the workforce. So, I think that that's kind of where I'm still at today, is that we should be preparing for the idea that I think we have time still to prepare in most industries. And this is why I encourage people to do these like AI impact assessments, like look at the individual roles in your company and your team in certain departments and try and project out 12 to 18 months from now. What do those roles look like? And do you have as much demand to keep as many people as you currently have employed? Or if demand's going to stay flat and you don't need as many people, what are you doing now? Can you upskill and reskill your team? Um, do you just reduce the number of new people you hire and you try and find ways to adapt with the existing staff? Like, and that's the part I'm worried about, that just not enough corporations are having those conversations. And I just feel like every company should be working on contingency planning and looking at different models when it comes to the workforce.
I love this next one. This is from one of our listeners, Tilly, and they ask, if you could ask OpenAI CEO Sam Altman one thing and have him answer 100% honestly, what would you ask?
Okay, so this is one I've actually thought about before. So I was glancing at these questions this morning before we started, and I went and grabbed a list of questions that I have actually thought about related to this exact one. So I'm gonna. I don't even know if I could pick just one. Um, okay, I'll do the first one. I'll see if I want to throw a couple of these other ones out. So the first is, I would ask him, OpenAI has championed the approach of iterative deployment and gradual transition to a world of AGI, so society has time to prepare. This is like fundamental to OpenAI. This is why they put ChatGPT out in the world. This is why they debuted Sora. It's why they're, showing the voice capabilities. Like, they try and release things so that governments and society have time to prepare for what's going to be possible. This is all fundamental to how they do everything. So my question would be, what happens if another company or government that doesn't share those principles gets there first? So this is like one of my fundamental challenges today with like open versus closed source, these companies that claim to be shepherding safe AGI versus, others. It's like you're not doing this in isolation. So if let's just pick a company, say Anthropic all of a sudden claims that they're there, that they
Mhm.
have AGI. What does OpenAI do? Do they throw iterative deployment out the window and they just give us GPT-6? Like I don't know. And I don't know that he would have like a really honest answer to that question because I'm not so sure that they really think ahead. So like another question I would ask that sort of plays this out is um, in a blog post Sam published called Planning for AGI and Beyond, he wrote, "The first AGI will just be a point along the continuum of intelligence. We think it's likely that progress will continue from there, possibly sustaining the rate of progress we've seen over the past decades for a long period of time." So, my question to him would then be, do you ever stop to personally process and visualize what that future would actually mean to society and humanity? Or is it even too abstract for him to contemplate? So, he's for years been pushing this idea of AGI is coming and we're going to build it, but
Mm.
maybe somebody else builds it while we're at it. Has he ever stopped to think about like what does that actually mean? Other than yeah, we're going to need universal basic income and it's going to be great. We'll find some new roles for people. Like I just don't. I've never heard an interview with any of these AI research lab leaders, these frontier model leaders, that has given a clear vision of what the world looks like when we get there.
Mm.
So I would want to know that.
All right. This next one comes from Anthony, and they ask, what are some of the most effective AI tools available today for small or medium sized businesses looking to optimize operations?
Yeah, and Mike, if you have any thoughts on this one, please jump in on it as well. Like, what I always tell people is, y- y- I would look at the industry you're in and what component of operations you're specifically thinking about, and I would go and find tools for those. Like, for example, you may be looking at, HR, finance, accounting. Like I'm trying to find AI tools to help with performance and reporting analysis, the automation of financial reports every week, where I just get a narrative as the CEO, like a fundamental, like here's what's happening, here's answers to your 10 key questions. Um, so I'm looking at it as that, and we're a small business. We have 7 employees. So I think about it from that perspective. But I honestly wouldn't underestimate ChatGPT/Gemini's ability to help answer this question for you. So what Mike and I have continuously found is if you take this kind of question and you tailor a prompt, like almost think about it as like you're talking to a top consultant in your space and talk to the AI that way and say, hey, listen, I need help figuring out ways as a small to medium sized business in X industry to leverage AI to optimize my operations and maximize my profit. I've given the example before of how I did this with a friend of mine who's a dentist, and we used it as a way to try and figure out how to maximize the organization when insurance rates were going up and the cost of goods were going up. And I'm not a dentist, so I have no idea, but like I'm able to craft the prompt and ask the right question to ChatGPT, and you get a really good response. So that to me is, I would, depending on your industry, I would go in there and say, hey, I'm in the accounting profession, I'm in the legal profession, I'm in retail, whatever it is. Here's some of the challenges I have currently in my operations. What are ways I could leverage AI, and please include example tools. Perplexity may give you a better answer if you start asking for like specific tools and recommendations and things like that. But I would create that prompt and then I would test it across a couple different language models. And that's high level. A takeaway for anyone listening today is like, don't just because you're paying $20 a month only use ChatGPT. Like Mike and I find all the time that some prompts you just get a better output in other models. And so we'll test these things all the time. So I don't know, Mike, do you have any other thoughts on that one? Anything you've tried?
Yeah, I would just say somewhat related. A big bottleneck for anyone, but especially a small business, is just limited bandwidth and focus on the right things. And I would say I probably wouldn't even be looking for dozens of different tool ideas unless I was very confident that me or my team were already absolute rock stars with prompting and getting value out of GPT 4.0, Gemini, and or Claude, because those three together with the right prompting and context can get you very, very, very far. Okay. Katharina asks, what's a good way to assess AI tools when there are so many options? Do you use an assessment framework?
Yeah, and this again, Mike, might be a good one for you to chime in with your own experience here. But I first look at the vendor. So we actually have, and we'll put it in the show notes. We have an AI tech vendor assessment that we created with the Marketing Artificial Intelligence book. So it's on our site. It's a free download. It's a Word doc you can download. Um, but what we recommend there is to make sure you look at like the vendor, that it's a legitimate AI tech company, that they, this isn't, just a software company that's throwing AI into their messaging to sell some licenses, that it's a real company with a public product roadmap, clear point of view on AI. It's obviously being infused into everything they're doing. Then you start looking at the technology itself and you're looking for specific value for you, making sure you're understanding the use cases it's going to enable. You're going to want to, like, if it's going to be a core part of your tech stack, you're going to want to look at their onboarding tools, their customer support in case you need guidance because your team's starting to figure out how to use this tool. But I think more than anything, it really just comes down to probably user stories. And what I mean by that is, all right, we're going to go find a podcasting tool. So let's say our podcast. It is a fundamental part of our overall strategy. We want to keep doubling down on the podcast, every aspect of it. We want to improve efficiency, productivity, creativity, quality of output, like all of it. So what I would do is say, okay, here's the 3 people working on the podcast today. Here's the 25 tasks that they do every week to do this podcast. I'm going to go find a tool or a collection of tools that enable us to improve efficiency, productivity, creativity, and quality across the podcast for those 3 people in these specific tasks. And so if you laser in on a very specific thing you want to achieve, not just let's just go get a tool and let's figure out how to use it later, but we have a specific business use case. We can define a user story of what their life looks like today without the tool. And then once we understand the tool, we can define, say, okay, 30, 60, 90 days from now, here's how this is going to improve what they're doing. And we're going to measure it that way. That to me is like the most important thing. You can get into user reviews and like all the usual things you would look at with any technology. But when you apply it and you have a very specific idea in mind of a campaign or a workflow, and you can benchmark that workflow and you can then measure improvement, that's the best way to buy any technology because you're going to get value or you're going to know if it's not working and you can stop it.
So, Jev asks, please speak about how small and medium businesses can apply AI to their customer data. Should they wait until their CRM providers infuse their systems with AI? Or should they use paid versions, for instance, of ChatGPT to plug in their data? How safe is all this in terms of data privacy?
So I'll work backwards in terms of data privacy. All these AI companies, and specifically, the frontier model companies, the big ones, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic, they understand they're not getting enterprise adoption if they're not protecting your data. So they're all building that in or have that in their terms of use already. Make sure your attorneys review that, though. Just make sure you're fully clear and confident, or IT, whoever in your organization needs to be involved. Make sure that they sign off on that before you go putting data in. That being said, under the assumption that your data is safe and you can put that kind of stuff into these models, I have personally seen some pretty solid success using ChatGPT Team/Plus license with data. Like it's getting really good at data analysis. They just introduced some new capabilities like 2 weeks ago around this. It used to be called code interpreter. Then it was advanced data analysis. Now I don't know what it's called at ChatGPT anymore. Um, but I think that the main providers being Google, Microsoft, Anthropic, Amazon, OpenAI, Meta, I guess eventually, they're going to build this data analysis capability right into these platforms. So I think 6 to 12 months from now, it's just going to be a common feature within there, and you're going to have data analysis capability that you previously would have had to hire someone outside for, or go get a PhD for. So that seems like a direction we're definitely heading. I'm starting to test those things myself. Um, but if you have the budget, I would talk to, a data analyst, a data scientist, that they understand ways to, organize and structure the data, clean the data. so that it has more value to you down the road and all as you start spreading out the AI applications you're looking at. But certainly for all of us, if we can access the data within our CRMs and use that, that's a great starting point. And Salesforce is doing that, HubSpot's doing that. All the CRM companies know that that's a key feature as well. So I would talk to your existing tech stack companies. I would confirm with your IT/legal that you're good to submit, data into ChatGPT or whatever, Gemini, whatever license you're using. And then I would start experimenting with use cases within those. That's Mike and I are doing that right now, where we're, putting data in and trying to, see what it gets out. But I will say they can still hallucinate even with the data side. So you have to have some understanding of your own data, and you have to know what to look for to make sure what it's telling you is right. Um, because otherwise you could rely on some false data.
Heather asks, do you have any success stories of a business adopting Gen AI that wouldn't necessarily be an obvious company to do so? What's your favorite story so far?
So a few episodes ago, we talked about Moderna and OpenAI. I loved that one. So that's episode 95, if you want to go back and listen to that main topic. And then actually, I'm in the midst of building our new Scaling AI course series, which is this new 8-course series that we're going to be launching soon. And one of the courses is called the AI Emergent Organization. And so in that, I wanted to go find companies that are doing this, that are kind of building these AI emergent versions of their company. They're using AI. And so I asked Mike to help me with the research. And he just like 2 weeks ago went and built a database of companies that we thought, based on our research, were doing a good job. So I'm actually going to kick this one back to you, Mike. And if there was any companies that really stood out to you when you were doing that research.
Yeah, for sure. So two stand out to me. Certainly not the only examples we found, but I just think they're unique in different ways. The first is a company called Klarna, which does a bunch of like e-commerce and payments. And Klarna has naturally a ton of customer service chats. Now, this is a pretty obvious area to start considering applying AI given the results you can get with AI in customer service areas. But I am really impressed with just the scale at which they appear to have done it. They've released a bunch of information on this. According to them, they already now have an AI assistant that has had 2.3 million conversations, or 2/3 of Klarna's customer service chats, and is doing the equivalent work of 700 full-time agents, and is on par with human agents in regards to customer satisfaction scores. So it's basically estimated to drive a $40 million profit improvement to Klarna in 2024. Just overall, really impressive in terms of the scale at which they appear to have rolled out AI for this particular use case. Now, another one is Publicis Group. And I mentioned this just because we did cover it on the podcast. This is a very early days one. I just more want to highlight it for the sheer magnitude of what they're trying to do and what is required. Now, Publicis is a big group of agencies, one of the leaders in the space, and they are investing $326 million in AI in the next 3 years to basically build a centralized brain for their company. That AI is going to be a layer over all of their data and help all of their people do everything that they do in a day to help service their clients, to help earn new business, to help the agency do all the creative and strategic tasks it does. So, us, Paul, coming from the agency world, that one jumped out as well. They're not just applying a few little use cases here and there. They're reinventing the company from the ground up with AI.
Yep, those are good ones.
All right. So Alec asks, what tools does the Marketing AI Institute team use in your workflow? Any GPTs the team has built that they find valuable?
Why don't you go on what tools you use? Because I would say I'm more of an experimenter. I obviously use ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini are kind of my main ones, but you're running content, so you could probably get more specific on what you're using.
Yeah, sure. I'll mention a few that are really valuable for our team. So Claude 3 Opus has been critical for any type of brainstorming or first drafts of any type of content or copy. Claude, like Paul mentioned, is just a model that's comparable to ChatGPT and Gemini, but for whatever reason does writing much, much better, in my opinion, than some of those. Gemini 1.5 Pro, which is the latest version of Gemini available in Gemini Advanced, paid version, paid plan at like $20 a month, is super, super helpful. It's got an incredibly long context window, so you can dump in literally hundreds of pages of material and start querying that data, using it in various ways, learning from it. That's been absolutely essential to what we do. And then there are things like another one our team loves that's just saved an enormous amount of time is Opus Clip, which takes our long form video, automatically splits it up into short form video, which is a critical format that we had kind of underinvested in previously because it took a really long time to create those clips manually.
And I would say Descript is probably like the biggest one. So that's what we use for our podcast, for our webinars, for transcription, for production, audio and video production. They've, I think, got a new AI feature that does the clips thing too.
Yeah.
So that's like absolutely core. And then there's the GPT question. So I haven't personally infused any GPTs into my workflow, but I will say there's the one I've talked about numerous times that I just haven't built yet is the generative AI policy. So, guiding people through building a generative AI policy. A couple episodes ago, I talked about the idea of like an AI profiler. In my case, I was doing it for a interview with a journalist where I just, went in and kind of built a couple of prompts to give me everything I need to know about that journalist. But you could do the same thing for, sales conversations, job interviews, things like that, where you basically just build a profile on someone where you tell it to go pull any, information that's available, do a personality profile based on their social shares, find anything they've written, stuff like that. So that's one we could turn into a GPT. And then the other one that I was kind of testing and building these scaling AI courses is actually a AI course assistant.
Mm.
And so, I've got it as a research assistant. I have it editing things. I have, it's ideates with me. So I just have a single thread in ChatGPT, in Gemini, in Perplexity, where I'm asking it to help with different things. And so I could easily take that and turn that into a GPT as well. But right now I'm just treating it as like a separate chat in each of those platforms.
All right. So Will asks, let me go through this question here. I've noticed varying opinions on who benefits the most from AI. A high level AI consultant I know is advising CEOs to focus on a small group of employees with more ideas than time. Meanwhile, many discussions emphasize spreading AI knowledge and skills across the whole enterprise. Given these differing approaches, how should leaders determine where to concentrate AI efforts? Should it be on those select high potential individuals, or should it be more broadly distributed when you talk about AI training and resources?
This one, I'm just kind of racking my brain here. Met with so many different companies, so many different sizes, different industries. And I don't know that there's a right single approach to this. I don't know if there's one answer to this question. I do think it is largely organization dependent. What I mean by that is some organizations have so much red tape, like so many obstacles to doing broader adoption, that getting a small group of people is their only choice. Like to keep
Mm.
this as tight as possible, as controlled as possible. It's the only way they're going to get permission to do these things. And so that might be their only option. Um, I think that when we look at how AI should be adopted, like I think the leading organizations, going back to that Moderna example from episode 95, it's decentralization. It's like empowering your entire team to experiment, to find the best use cases, to share the best prompts. Like that's how companies are going to really innovate.
Mm.
Siloing this knowledge and capability in a few select people, it'll make an impact. But it just seems to me it's probably not the ideal long term. Now, from a research perspective, this the study that comes to mind is the BCG one from 2023, where they benchmarked, it was like 700 consultants, I think,
Yeah.
and they benchmarked their performance before they gave them GPT-4 and then after. And what they found, and there was like very little training of how to use it. Like they didn't even do full blown, um, you know, onboarding the way you should. But what they found was the the consultants that performed lower on the benchmark, so before GPT, saw a much greater improvement in their performance. I think it was like 41% improvement in their performance. The high performers pre-benchmark um, saw a smaller increase. It was like 17%. Now they both improved. So like your A players became A plus players basically. Your B and C players moved up to like A player status. So the B and C players are making this much larger jump. Well, that would argue for distribution of features and benefits across the whole team, not a small group of people.
Mm.
Because those A players are going to improve and they're in turn going to drive productivity and performance for the organization. But if you distribute the capabilities across everyone and you teach them how to use it, all of the sudden your entire employee base levels up and your organization can rise with that. So I think that the better play is democratization of AI literacy and technology within the organization, but it's not going to be the reality for every company. They're not going to be able to do that. And so then I would say a small group is better than nothing. Like whatever you need to do to accelerate, do it. And if you can get everyone involved, I think you should.
Sanando asks, how do people use AI in their daily lives? Is it primarily using tools like ChatGPT or Perplexity, or is there something beyond that which can help save time or just solve daily problems?
I feel like I think we just had maybe an upcoming episode we were going to talk about something related to this, but I think there's this great question right now around AI adoption. We're seeing like we saw this Microsoft LinkedIn study recently that said was it like 75 or 78% of people are using Gen AI at work and 48% of them were in the last 6 months. So you look at that and it's like, oh, everybody's using it. But then you go talk to the real world, and I saw data recently, it was like 7% of people are using ChatGPT or like
Mm.
even know what it is. And you're like, you can easily step out into the real world and like be with family or friends or, your buddies who aren't in the marketing world or aren't in tech. And they're like, I don't know. I don't really use it. Like, so there's confusing signals right now of like whether or not society has it, uses it, or wants it.
Mm.
My argument here is we've all been using AI dozens of times a day for the last 10 years. Like if you use TikTok, if you use your iPhone, if you drive in a Tesla, if you use Google Maps or Amazon or Spotify or Netflix, like we're all using AI. We just don't know it. So then the question becomes, well, who's going out and seeking specific AI tools like a ChatGPT or Perplexity? I think that might be fewer if they're not college students. Like I think college students are racing to use these things.
Mm.
Um, I think people on like TikTok and Instagram for Reels, like they're going and seeking AI tools that help them do creative stuff. But in terms of real world, I don't know that it's that prevalent. Like a couple of examples I think about is again, I'm in this obviously, but I use voice all the time. So not just talking to like to do text message, like voice to text there, but to do it to create documents, to send emails. Like you speak so much faster than you type. And so I have started using voice capabilities in all of the things. The other things I've personally used it for is my kids' homework. So my kids are in fifth and sixth grade, going into sixth and seventh, and they have questions all the time I don't know the answers to. I don't even know how to help them. Whether it's a coding question my daughter has, or a math question, or a language question. Like Mike, you and I have both joked, like we're writers by trade, like went to school for writing. But if you ask me for like technical, like how to
Yeah.
diagram a sentence, or like you know what the predicate noun is, like what it's like. I don't know. It's been like 20 years since I studied that. I just know how to use words. I don't know how to explain to you why I did it. And so I'll use Perplexity all the time to help me help them. That's me seeking an AI tool to help solve something. The other one is I'll get asked questions from like friends or family who own businesses in industries I don't understand. And like I would usually have to stop and do a bunch of research. Now I just create a prompt and I go into Perplexity and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to advise somebody on this. Here's the business. Here's the challenge they're having. What would I do? And then it gives it to me now as a strategist, as a marketer, as an entrepreneur. I can assess that output, like know if it's any good and know whether or not to send it to my friend or family. Um, but I think those are the kinds of things that I don't know of that many people on average doing it. Like I'm not at family parties and hearing aunts and uncles that are saying, "Oh yeah, I was using ChatGPT yesterday to
Mm.
do the thing." So I don't know. Like the data would tell us it's not as prevalent as we may think it is in the bubble we all live in.
So Chad asks, looking at the next year, 5 years, 10 years, like what do you think the adoption of AI technology will be for most businesses? Do you see it coming more for skilled labor type jobs as well, or just being used to assist like labor jobs?
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts here. Maybe we'll put it in the show notes, but the law of uneven AI distribution, I've referenced a number of times. I wrote it, I think, in early 2023. This idea that we all have access to the same stuff, whether you're a lawyer, an accountant, an engineer, an HR professional, a consultant, whatever you're doing for a living, a writer, a teacher, every one of us can go get the same tool for 20 bucks a month. It's kind of like the iPhone. Like if you have 500 bucks or 700 bucks, whatever it is, we all have access to the exact same technology. Whether you're a billionaire or you're fresh out of school making $30,000 a year, same stuff's available to all of us. How you use that, the benefit you get from it will not be evenly distributed because some people don't understand what it's capable of. Some people may not have access to it because it's shut off in their company, even though it's there, they're not allowed to use it. And some people just won't accept what they have to give up to get it, like the privacy side or the data side. They're just not willing to give up that information to some company. And so I don't think it's going to be evenly distributed. I do think some industries are going to be more heavily impacted than others in the near term. Um, but at the end of the day, like I think 3 to 5 years from now, I don't understand how a business functions without it completely infused across every department of their organization. Like you would be at such a competitive disadvantage. It would be like, I don't know how to like relate this, but it would almost be like if we went back to 2005 and let's say like the internet and email starts exploding 99, 2000 range and 2005 hits and your company still doesn't have a website, isn't
Mm.
using email, and nobody in the company uses Google to search anything. That's basically what it's going to be like 3 years to 5 years from now if you haven't fully infused AI. You will be at such a disadvantage to the companies who found ways to apply this general purpose technology across marketing, sales, service, HR, finance, operations, legal. So I don't think companies that haven't deeply infused this 3 to 5 years from now exist. Like I think you're just going to be obsoleted basically. So and that, again, that 3 to 5 years is more of an average.
Yeah.
Some industries, it may take 7, I don't know. Some, it's gonna be 1. But overall average, 3 to 5 years, it has to be infused into every function of the business.
Najam asks, given, the rapid pace of AI innovation and development, this can be overwhelming even for those with extensive experience in technology and marketing and business. Given that, how can professionals across various industries effectively stay updated and enhance their knowledge, especially without, a serious tech background?
I don't know about you, Mike, but it's overwhelming for me. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, like so I've shared this before, but again, if you're a new listener, the way Mike and I do this podcast is I have a Twitter thread that I get notifications for. There's probably, I don't know, 50 or 60 people and brands that I get notifications for. So I have my list. That's one filter, but a filter beyond that is notifications, media outlets, things like that. That is like 90 to 95% of what we talk about on this show. And the things I read every week come from that notification list. So the vast majority of the way I curate information and consume it is through notifications on Twitter. The $22 a month I give Twitter, I would pay that 2,200 or $22 just for notification access. Like that's valuable to me. Um, so I've created these different filters just to get down to the things I think matter each week. Then Mike takes all of those things, 30, 40 things each week, and he curates those down to the ones that we're going to actually talk about. He picks the 3 main topics, the rapid fire items. He sends them to me, says, how's this look? Are we good to go? I maybe have a few, notes like, yeah, let's move this one up here. Let's swap this, or let's make this the main topic, whatever. But generally speaking, that's how it happens. And then Sunday night or Monday morning, we have to actually prepare for the show. Like now I'm going in and like deeply thinking about these things. And sometimes I do it in 30 minutes, sometimes, an hour or 2 hours. But that time is therapeutic, but it is like overwhelming
Mm.
sometimes. Like there's sometimes on that Sunday night where like, I don't even know how I'm going to be ready to talk about things Monday morning. Like they're
Yeah.
so deep and so far reaching. Um, so I say all that to say I'm with you. Like I totally get that this is crazy and overwhelming and abstract and sometimes terrifying, every once in a while exciting. But I think the way I advise people generally is the fire hose Mike and I drink from each week is not advisable. Like it's it is daunting sometimes, and you have to get really good at compartmentalizing information so you still sleep at night. For most people, the opportunity is to pick a thread about AI that matters to your role you have now, the role you want to have in the future, or like the value you want to create with this knowledge. So if it's AI in the legal industry or AI for engineers or AI in the retail industry or like a specific component of AI, like the impact on the workforce or the impact on higher education, like do that. Like listen to our podcast once a week, get our newsletter, maybe get a couple other newsletters. There's a few other ones that Mike and I love that we subscribe to. That's enough. And like dip in for an hour or two each week and try and get the macro level, but spend 95% of your time on the micro. Like go narrow with the AI expertise because that's what the world is going to need
Hmm.
is a lot more people who have AI expertise in a specific domain. Um, the other thing I would say here is we have the AI Mastery membership. If you're not familiar with that, we'll put the link in the show notes. But we have an annual membership program, like a subscription program. And Mike and I, as part of that, do a quarterly trends report. So we'll actually do a dedicated 1 hour with that group each quarter to kind of catch them up on that. And then the other thing I would say is like create an AI council or be a part of an AI council within your organization and have one of the pieces of that council be meeting once a month to talk about what's going on, what are the trends and how do they matter to your organization. So I, to summarize, focus on a thread of AI and like dip in once or twice a week to the macro level, unless you really, really want to go deep and have the fire hose effect.
So, some more kind of career related questions here. Tyler says, I'm a 40-year-old PR and communications professional. How can I future proof my career in AI, ensuring that my skills remain relevant as the field evolves? What are the best certifications for someone looking to gain expertise in AI?
Um, so again, I don't want this to sound self-promotional, but like what we've built at the Institute is meant to be a learning journey for people. So we envisioned years ago, what would it take to achieve mastery of the topic of AI? And then I've been working on building this learning journey for the last 3 years, basically. So for us, it's intro to AI, like fundamentals of AI. Then it's piloting AI, which is the course series I mentioned at the beginning. That is like, okay, you understand the fundamentals. Now let's figure out how to apply this to your career. Go deeper on like the macro of what is AI, why does it matter, who are the key players, how do I build, support for it in my organization, use cases, tools, how do I adapt my learning journey? Like that's what piloting is all about. Scaling AI is the next step in that learning journey for us. How do I now take this knowledge and figure out how to operationalize it in my own career and within my organization? And then the mastery membership I just mentioned is kind of okay, how do I now stay up on everything? So that is truly like the vision I had like 4 years ago. We finally have brought all this to life. That being said, we're just one option. We try and give very diverse points of view. We try and be as objective as possible from all angles to let you decide what to do with the information. But we learn from all kinds of other different sources. Like Coursera has a ton of great stuff. Like
Hmm.
what's Andrew Ng's is AI for Everyone. It's like phenomenal course from Andrew Ng, and I think it's free. Andrew Ng is the co-founding member of Google Deep Brain or Google Brain before he left and went on and he created Coursera, and he's an amazing AI leader. There's a ton of great stuff on LinkedIn Learning. There's some amazing people to follow on Twitter that can really curate this information. So I think you got to kind of find find those threads, find the people who specialize in PR and communications, like whatever you want to do, find the influencers, thought leaders who are talking about that topic there, and then go and find these other courses. In terms of specifically around certifications, I don't know, other than the ones we offer. I think Coursera and LinkedIn Learning both offer certificates based on completion. Google offers free AI training. They've got some very approachable AI for business. IBM has some stuff. Amazon has some stuff. So I would check with all those, kind of frontier companies because they're trying to build an AI savvy workforce.
Mandy asks, besides sharing on LinkedIn how I'm using AI, are there other ways to showcase my AI knowledge while looking for a job?
Um, Couple things come to mind. So in Cleveland, we run an AI in CLE. So CLE is short for Cleveland, for anyone not from Cleveland who doesn't know that. So we have quarterly AI and CLE events. They're free to attend, and they're just networking events. We'll get on average 100 to 120 people that come, and it's just people interested in this topic. And I think getting yourself in those kinds of groups, whether they're in person or virtual, find where the people like you, like minded, are congregating and start networking and building relationships with those people. The other thing, and this is like advice I would give, back in the day to college students when we were doing like interviews for the agency, um, volunteer with a nonprofit who needs the help. Like everybody needs to figure this out. So find an organization you care about whose cause means something to you and offer to help them build an AI strategy. Find use cases, find some free or, affordable tools that they can use to drive donations or, grow their audience or whatever it is, grow brand awareness. So apply what you're learning in a way that benefits society. Like I think those are two great ways you can do it. And then, that's a very fast way to also then like build a reputation as someone who knows what they're doing and build some goodwill. And almost all these nonprofits have boards that, have people who are connected in your community, your industry. So yeah, I would think about a couple of ways to do that.
Sevdi asks, what do you think AI's role will be in strategy work as it evolves? Currently, there's a big emphasis on AI aiding with, say, content generation, repetitive work, but curious about its potential for coming up with business and marketing strategy.
Yeah, so this is a interesting one that's highly relevant to this morning. So I was mentioning that I was working on this scaling AI course series, and as part of that series, basically I was developing a prompt to try and help organizations and individuals figure out which tasks AI has the greatest opportunity to help with, and strategic planning, which requires advanced reasoning capabilities, is one of the things that I was specifically interested in. So, what I think is going to happen is the next versions of models. We know OpenAI is now in training on their next model. They disclosed that yesterday, which I think we kind of already knew, but they actually are saying it's happening now. Um, they're all going to continue to improve at their ability to do reasoning, to follow kind of a chain of thought, a number of steps to an outcome. And the example, again, it's like I haven't published this yet, but like I showed it to Mike this morning too. In Google Gemini 1.5, I gave it this prompt and asked it to kind of analyze the job of a marketing manager, was the specific example I gave it. And I gave it different exposure levels of like the exposure of that role or those tasks to AI assisting or replacing parts of the work. And one of the ones in particular I said was like exposure given advanced reasoning capabilities. And it demonstrated advanced reasoning capabilities to create the output that it gave me, and that it understands very deeply what's involved in the process of strategic planning, which I was kind of honestly blown away by. Like the output was somewhat shocking to me. And so I think what's going to happen is the reasoning capability is going to get really good, really fast. And then people are going to start infusing AI into all kinds of strategic planning processes. I would start experimenting with it now. It's already probably better than you think it is. But I think by the end of this year, it's going to be like senior strategist level good. Like what I saw with the output I'm referring to was senior strategist level good. Like when I was running my agency, and people don't know, Mike and I worked together at my agency. I sold it in 2021. We did strategy for people. Um, if I would have given the prompt I gave to Gemini to a senior strategist, I'm saying 10, 15 years experience, no offense to Mike, who was one of the top strategists we ever had at the agency, I'm not sure I've ever employed a strategist who could have done what it did. Like, and it did it in 30 seconds. Like Mike and other top strategists could have done it, but it was a week's worth of work. It would have taken me a week to do what it output in 30 seconds. And I checked the work. I was like, geez, oh man, like
Hmm.
not only did it do it, it's really, really advanced, like really good. So based on what I'm seeing and what I know the research labs are working on and the importance of reasoning to them, um, I don't see how AI isn't an extremely advanced strategy assistant by the end of this year
Hmm.
in every large language model that you may use, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, all of them. I think it's maybe the most underrated use case right now. Today's models is a strategy assistant.
So William then kind of with that context of your background as an agency owner, Paul, he asks, what new AI enabled services would you be adding to your client service model if you were, running an agency?
So I'm going to answer this specific to agencies, but I'm going to make it applicable to everyone listening because this needs to either be outside agency or it needs to be someone internally. So if
Mm.
you're the person internally, everything I'm about to say is things you could be building capabilities around and just doing it in house, which I think is what a lot of people are going to do. So, large language model strategy and implementation. We just talked about an example. If your team, and you just take the leadership, is unaware of Gemini 1.5's reasoning ability and ability to help plan, they're completely missing major value creation right now without these models getting any better. So, people who deeply understand what these models are capable of, and not just text, but like multimodal models, what they're capable of, that can build strategies about how to use them and then train and implement the team across the business, all functions of the business to do them. Huge. AI education and training. You've got to have people who can teach this stuff, the fundamentals, the ongoing process. So that learning journey I talked about earlier, every organization needs that. And we're going to need people within these organizations or outside agencies, consultants who can help do it. AI tech integration. Again, you get to script, who's integrating it? Like, for the podcast, for webinars, for online courses, got to have people who understand deeply the tools so that they can do the integration and onboarding. Change management, massive. There's almost no change management happening around AI in organizations we talk to.
Mm.
And it is going to be required in every organization. Like starting today, if they know what they're doing, but I don't see how 1 to 2 years out, every single organization doesn't have some form of AI change management being implemented. AI agents is sort of like a on the frontier coming thing. The ability to work with them, to build them, to have them trained to work together, to envision how they work together, all those things. And then just augmented creativity, like being able to enhance what you're capable of doing, adding video capabilities, adding image capabilities if you didn't have them, audio capabilities, like all these things the models are going to enable. People need to know how to use them. And there's just very, very low understanding of that stuff right now.
Few other kind of agency related or adjacent questions here. Gabriella says, if you were launching a marketing agency today, how would you approach specifically that scaling up with AI tools?
Um, yeah, so I again, I'll answer this specific to agencies, but it's applicable to everyone. The way we teach every company, if you want to scale, is 5 steps: education and training, so AI literacy, AI council, like have a body of people who have either the authority to move this forward or at least whose opinions are respected, who they can support the moving forward. Generative AI policies, responsible AI principles. Number 3, AI impact assessments of your team, your partners, your tech stack, um, your products and services. Like, what is the impact this is going to have in the next 1 to 3 years? And then the 5th is build an AI roadmap. Like to truly scale, you need to do all of those things. They don't have to happen all today, but you have to have a plan to do all of them. So I would literally just say, like, what is a smarter version of everything we do? I think about this all the time for the Institute. The Institute is media, events, and education. Those are like the 3 main arms of what we do. AI research and consulting are sort of like emerging areas. Every day I think about what's a smarter version of this. Every time we're going to launch an event, a new virtual summit, we're going to start doing more research. I look at it and say, okay, how would I have done this historically? How could I do a smarter version of this? I would think about that with every service I launch, every internal process we go through regularly, every revenue model. And then if I'm building it from the ground up, I'm going to say, how do I do this with the fewest amount of people possible?
Mm.
That isn't a bad thing. Like, so you have
Um,
to You have to separate this out. And Mike, you and I have talked about this before. Like, if you're an existing company, thinking of AI as a way to get rid of people is not the right approach. I'm not an advocate of that at all. If you're building from the ground up, building with fewer people isn't a bad thing. Like, building a more efficient, profitable business that creates more fulfilling careers for the people that are there, it just means you have to hire fewer people to get to where you want to go. So when you're running an agency, maybe your revenue per employee annually is 150, 200,000, maybe 250 if you're kind of a leading agency. That's how much money each employee generates. I don't see any reason why an agency starting today, that number shouldn't be a half a million to 750,000 per
Mm,
employee.
mm.
So if you can build a business where you're generating 2 to 3x revenue per employee and that person's still only working 40-hour weeks, that's great for everyone. And I think that's what people should be thinking about.
Okay, so kind of switching up the topic area here. Rob asks, if you were leading a college degree in marketing, what would you do to ensure that your students are prepared for the future with AI?
So about 7 years ago, I made an argument to a major university that intro to AI should be a required class for every freshman. So this is long before ChatGPT. Um, my belief at the time, my belief still today, is everyone in every profession, every major should take intro to AI. And they should understand the fundamentals so that they can connect the dots about the impact it'll have on their career path, the industry that they go into. So I would start with that fundamentals within a marketing degree for sure. I would focus on deep integration of AI into every aspect of the curriculum, specifically around the experiences that are created. I would bring in tech demos, either by outside experts or by students. I would enable students to share best prompts. I would think of it as an aid to critical thinking. We still have to develop critical thinking, strategic thinking, reasoning capabilities, but I would have AI help accelerate the development of those things. I would try and figure out how to do personalized learning around it. But going back to like the infusion and everything, I would just think about every assignment you're giving and say, how can AI be an assistant in this assignment?
Mm.
And then I would have that be part of the process. Like, okay, I'm giving you this assignment to go do a total addressable market study. I want you to use Google Gemini 1.5 in the process. As part of your deliverable, I want you to walk me through the prompts that you provided, how you had a conversation with AI, the follow-on prompts you had, what you learned from, like, I would teach them how to infuse it into what they're doing, but make sure they're thinking critically about the outputs they're getting and that they're getting better at knowing how to prompt the system to get what they're looking for, and then how to verify sources, vet those citations, like things like that. It's what's going to be asked of them in the real world. And I think that the sooner in high school and college and even into like primary school, the sooner we teach them how to work with the tools, the more capable they're going to be when they get into the professional world.
Okay, so Brian then kind of asks a great follow on related to education. Like, given the advances of in AI and the capabilities of essentially instant knowledge transfer to anyone at any time, like, are we approaching the end of the need for the education system? At least the way it's currently constructed. Like, what do you think the next evolution of education looks like?
Yeah, I want to believe that there's always going to be a place for higher education. Like, I think that when I look back on my time at university, there's so much more to college experience than just the classes.
Mhm.
It's just such a valuable experience in so many ways, and it teaches you diversity of thinking. Like, it teaches you how to work in groups. It teaches you how to build relationships and work with mentors and like I don't know, like, so at a high level, I think there's just so much value to higher education. Um, that being said, it has its deficiencies and it's really expensive. And as a parent of someone who's going to have, college age kids in 5, 6 years, you do start to wonder, like, is it worth whatever that costs? I don't even know, 50,000, 100,000, like whatever a college education costs these days. Um, if I don't think that they really need what they're going to learn there. So I don't know. Like, I'm not deep in higher ed, but I've spent a lot of time with higher ed leaders. And what I know about it is change is really hard in higher education. To progress a university, you need professors who welcome the change. My experience has been there are amazing, innovative, forward-thinking professors in every university, and then there are a bunch of them who don't want to learn the new thing and don't want to teach the new thing.
Hmm.
And so they're going to be resistant to AI, and it's just straight plagiarism to them. And I don't care what you say to me. Like, there's going to be those people too. And if I was a parent paying 50,000 a year for a higher education and half of my kids' teachers didn't want to teach I would have a serious problem. Um, so I think that as it becomes a more integral part of corporate life, as more business leaders who are parents who have kids college age start asking around, like, well, what are you learning? Are they teaching you how to use Perplexity? Are you learning how to use Gemini? Do you have Microsoft Copilot? Because that's what I'm using at work now. And if the answer is no, you're going to start getting a lot of backlash from parents who are unhappy about the lack of AI literacy being infused into higher education. So I don't think this is like flip a switch next year. Higher ed's got an AI problem, but I do think that in the years ahead, we're going to start running into some major problems if universities haven't adapted to infuse it more deeply into what they're doing.
Anuj asks, what technological moment needs to happen to allow AI like ChatGPT to cross the chasm to the early/late majority of users? So, within the tech community, there's very heavy use, but if you look at other industries, it seems like there's still very limited use outside of curiosity. Is it a matter of being embedded into iOS or some other event?
It could be a mix of being embedded into the platforms, but right now, like Copilot, Gemini, um, ChatGPT, like someone's got to buy those licenses.
Hmm.
So it's usually, the IT side coordinating it, CIO's office. Somebody's got to get the licenses for the 20, $30 a month, which is not insignificant when you're talking about thousands of licenses. And then somebody's got to teach them how to use the tools. So the procurement part is easier because you can go get the budget to get 500 licenses and start testing them. Where we're seeing the disconnect is the teaching of the people of how to use them.
Hmm.
So if we go grab 1,000 Copilot licenses today and we get, approval for 12 months, and 6 months from now, only 200 of those licenses have even been distributed to the team, and no one did any benchmarking of performance before or after, and nobody did proper onboarding of how to use them and taught them, here's the top 10 use cases for you, accountant, for you, marketing manager, for you, engineer. If no one's done that part, then what's the value going to be? And now we're going to be, at the end of the license saying, did we get the value for the 1,000 licenses? And be like, nah, like utilization rates are like 10%. So my argument is we have a literacy problem. Until we solve AI literacy, until we solve a deeper understanding across organizations of what is possible, then we're going to have disappointment with these tools, and we're going to have a bit of a mirage. We're going to think that they're not as good as they're said to be. They're not as valuable as they're said to be, but it's actually user error, not the fault of the platforms. And so I've seen that time and time again, meeting with big enterprises, that they're going and getting licenses for things, and then they're just not properly onboarding people and teaching them what they are. And you got a bunch of people who are like afraid these things are going to put them out of jobs. Like, they're not in a big hurry to like figure out how to use them. So AI literacy and change management, without those, we will continue to not have, deep adoption.
Diego asks, as people give AI like GPT-4o access to their cameras and show them things like their homes, offices, desktops, documents, shouldn't we be asking questions about privacy and security? Do we trust these companies so much?
So this goes back to the law of uneven AI distribution and the acceptance variable. Do we accept what we have to give up to get the benefit? This is 100% a problem in enterprises, in our personal lives. I've said on the podcast, for better or for worse, Apple is probably the company I trust the most. On episode 101, we're actually going to talk about a new report from the information that came out today about Apple's efforts to keep your data private on the iPhone when they introduced their new language model capabilities in June. Um, yeah, so this is why like Humane Pin and Rabbit and like all these startups, whether they're device companies or software companies, are going to have major adoption problems. Is the savvy consumer is like, I don't know who this company is. Like, I'm not trusting them with my data.
Hmm.
We heard about this with like Roomba and stuff, like robots in your home that were able to map like your house and where things are kept. Like, that's kind of weird. Or like cameras that, you put in your house. Some people choose to put them in their like babies' rooms. Those cameras have computer vision. Employees at those companies have access to that data. Um, it's a problem. Like, and so people are going to have choices if they're educated on how these tools work and where that data resides. Then they may make the choice not to do it. The problem is most people have no clue how computer vision works, how it recognizes people and objects through those cameras. And so the same thing is going to, kind of follow on where a lot of people are just gonna be like, I don't care. Like, whatever. My iPhone's always listening to me anyway. Like, I'm just going to do it. So it's just, yeah. But the short answer, privacy security, major problems. It is going to be a recurring theme you're going to hear about as AI, diffuses throughout society.
All right, Paul, last question. Made it. This comes from Guy. How do you see regulation affecting AI? In particular, how will it benefit or hinder some more than others? For context, we're seeing a lot of different regulations being put into place by different governments, which could impact development and productivity. In Europe, we only just got access to Claude, and the Gemini mobile app is not yet available. So we're technically behind everyone else when it comes to understanding and using those models.
Yeah, so this definitely goes back to the law of uneven AI distribution. This is the accessibility variable. Company may not allow it, country may not allow it, state may shut it down. If you're in California, they got all kinds of stuff going on there. In the US, I think, we've talked about there's like 700 pieces of AI legislation in varying, degrees being pushed forward. Regulation is going to be a part of this story. How it affects it and where it goes and, whether it slows things down, we just don't know. But certainly different countries, are already seeing that the EU AI Act is absolutely going to play a role. Like, there's probably really good aspects of it. There's probably parts that are going to, slow down some progress as well. So, yeah, and this again goes back to the idea of find your thread. Like, if this is something you're really interested in, go deep on it. Like, be an expert in AI and regulation. Like, it's a fascinating area of study. Like, I don't have a ton of time to spend on it, but you could probably spend a day a week just like processing what's going on in this space. So, yeah, definitely part of the story. And Mike, I'm going to throw a curveball here. I'm
Yes.
going to end with like a really kind of upbeat thing. You go first, but like, when we think about all this, like, there's a lot of daunting things. There's regulation, there's privacy and security, there's lack of adoption, there's people being frustrated in their corporation because it's not moving fast enough. But there's all this amazing potential. And so I want to end with, what are we most excited about? So, Mike, knowing everything we know, all the stuff we talk about, everything we see and do, what are you most excited about with, say, the next year of AI?
Think you alluded to mine in when you were talking about AI being underrated for strategy. What I'm most excited about is the idea that people still really underrate the idea of AI as intelligence on demand. Like, I'm not kidding when I say it's super exciting to me and has actually happened that through use of these tools, I've easily gotten functionally a 10 to 20 point IQ bump, which would have been impossible through any other means and is only going to grow. So, with all the doom and gloom, which I very much feel, it's amazing to be able to go have this incredible new affordable tool to go really solve interesting intellectual knowledge work problems. I think we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, I love that one. So for me, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to do two. So at a high level, scientific discovery, I've said this before, like, I think it's just going to be a golden age of scientific discovery, cures for diseases, solutions to some of the biggest problems we faced in humanity. Like, I think we're just knocking on the door of some amazing breakthroughs, in the next 1 to 10 years. On the business side, though, I think I find the idea of building like an AI native or AI emergent company amazingly invigorating. Like, so when I think about our own business, how do I build a smarter version of a media company? How do I build a smarter version of an event company? How do I build a smarter version of an online education business, a research firm? Like, as someone who's been, I've been in this 25 years. I started my career in 2000. I feel like as excited as day one because anything's possible now. Like, I can just look out and say, but there's no rules. Like, there's nothing saying we can't build a company 10x what we are today with like 5 more people.
Mm.
And those people can have amazing lives and amazing careers, and we can create financial independence for them and their families. Like, and we can help tens of thousands of people figure this. Like, we can do all of that, and we don't need 100 people or 1,000 people to do it. That's kind of like the Moderna one. Like, going back to that case study, he's like, we're going to accelerate drug discovery. We're going to launch like 10 new drugs in 5 years, whatever it was. It used to need 100,000 people. Now we can do it with 1,000. I feel that way for any business right now, where you can build smarter from the ground up in entirely new ways, where you're going to like a first principles approach. Like, what would I do if I didn't have all like our existing financial model? If I didn't have, if I was an agent, if I didn't have billable hours to worry about, or if I didn't have this, what would I do? If I was higher education and I didn't have all this legacy stuff holding us back, what would I build? And I just think the fact that we can ask that question, like, what would I build if anything was possible? Well, what if it is? It's so inspiring as an entrepreneur to be able to look out and see a smarter version of businesses being built in every industry. And because we have the knowledge we have, to be able to help people bring those to life. Like, that's awesome. And I think when I got asked this yesterday, like, how do you sleep at night? Like, people are asking me all these like hard, big picture questions. And I think part of the way I do is I balance it with these thoughts that it doesn't have to be doom and gloom. Like, it can be abundant. It can be amazing. It can be inspiring. We can reinvent, reimagine everything. And I think the people who choose to latch on to that mentality have tremendous opportunity to build incredible things.
That is an awesome note to end this on. I am also excited for the next 100 episodes of the podcast.
It was 100. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Thanks everyone who submitted questions for this. Mike, thanks as always for the work you do to get all this stuff in an order. We can talk about it every week, and showing up every week with me to do this. It's a lot to show up every week, but yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way right now. I think it's such an amazing time to be living through what may end up being the biggest transformation in business and human history. And like, we get a front row seat to it. We get to talk about it every week. So we're glad and grateful that you all listen.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Paul. And thanks everyone for sticking with us for however many episodes you've been with us. Here's to the next 100, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks for listening to The AI Show. Visit marketingaiinstitute.com to continue your AI learning journey and join more than 60,000 professionals and business leaders who have subscribed to the weekly newsletter, downloaded the AI blueprints, attended virtual and in-person events, taken our online AI courses, and engaged in the Slack community. Until next time, stay curious and explore AI.